Okay, welcome everybody. Thank you so much for being here with us this morning. We appreciate your time. We appreciate Faizan for being here and ready to share his expertise with us. Before we get started, we do have some new folks here, so we'll just go over our standard housekeeping things. First thing we'll let you know is we are recording this session and we'll try to post it on our website at a later date. Second thing, which may be pretty obvious to you by now, is that you've joined without your video of yourself showing and you're muted. You have not done anything wrong. That's just the settings for this program. And we'll be communicating with you through our Q&A panel. So you'll be able to type in whatever questions and comments you have, and we'll try to answer as many appropriate ones as we can during our time here together this morning. So how do you get to that? For some of you, if you're on your computer, it probably popped up right on the right-hand side of your screen. You'll see your Q&A panel. You may just have to expand it, and then you'll see your text box where you can send your questions right to me. If you don't see that and you're on a laptop, if so you look at the bottom right-hand side of your screen, you'll see the question mark in a box with Q&A. And then if you're on a tablet or a smartphone, you have to touch your screen. You'll see a circle with 3 dots, and then you should see your Q&A panel. So we hope you participate in that way. And I want to thank the sponsors of our program, which is my Department of Senior Services here in Erie County, Blue Cross Blue Shield of Western New York, Excelsior Orthopedics, and Wegmans, because they help make the program possible. And as always, we at Senior Services are here for you. If you have questions about programs, services, or benefits for yourself or a loved one, we're at 858-8526. Now, let's learn about our instructor today. Faizan Haq has been teaching intercultural, international, and organizational communication at Buffalo State College since 2004. He has also taught USA in the Muslim world and Islamic cultural history. Haq is known as a media analyst and has been asked to render his opinions for various media networks on diverse international issues, including ABC, NBC, Voice of America, TV One, and other Pakistani and international media outlets. He is the founder and publisher of WesternNewYorkMuslims.org and is an active member of Western New York Interfaith Community and an alumnus of Leadership Buffalo in 2007. He is also currently serving on the National Board of American Pakistani Public Affairs Action Committee, and he's been engaged with us at University Express for over 10 years, and we are so excited to have him here today. So without further ado, I will turn it over. Thank you for being here.
Thank you so much, Catherine. It was so nice of you to organize this. I apologize that I was trying to learn this WebEx in the beginning to see how it works. And with Catherine's help, I was able to figure it out. I'm feeling quite proud of myself that I was able to work it out. I'm teaching online. We use Zoom all the time. But when you move from one platform to another, everything kind of behaves a bit differently. But this is good. I'm very excited, and because I missed you all, I used to go to different senior centers and speak. But here I am, and we're going to speak about the situation in the Middle East, and also specifically, I'm going to say that we will speak Iranian-centric conversation we will have today. And it is a conversation, not more like a presentation, but I will share some slides just to make sure that everybody's on, with us. So if you really look at, if you're looking at the screen, and I hope you are, so I have the map of the Middle East in front of you. So I am going to kind of zoom out of here, and so we can travel in the world. So here we are over here, which is in New York. Let's see if we can see Buffalo. So here, New York, that's where we are. And now from here, we are traveling and we are going without sitting in a plane. We are moving from here and we are all the way over here in Iran. So Iran, we will go some basic information about Iran, but as you know, Iran is old as Persia, and Persian Empire had a great impact on the world civilization from the beginning of the recorded history. I'm sure you have seen all those films that has come about the Persian Empire and the Greek Empire and so on and so forth. So so Iranian people have great traditions, and they consider themselves, because of their historic background, they consider themselves representative of an ancient civilization. So there's a lot of pride in their identity, language, literature. I'm sure you must have heard of this famous poet called Rumi. So Rumi was actually a Persian. He was from, by the way, he was from Afghanistan. He traveled to Iran and settled through Iran and settled in eastern Turkey. That is where Rumi's tomb is. And Rumi said something very interesting. He said, not only that the thirsty seeks the water, but water always also seeks the thirsty. So and many people say, keep your glass empty, so somebody can come and fill it for you. But if you have the glass full, it's kind of a lesson in humility and knowing that not everybody knows everything. So I want to start with that. I don't know everything, but I know something. Whatever I know, I'm going to render my opinion, and I would be happy to entertain any questions if you may have any at the end. So so with this a bit of a background, I want to show you that you see all these roads who are going with Iran. So many people, I know that my brother-in-law did that, and I know my uncle did that in 1970s. What they did was they traveled all over Europe by road. So they left England, they took a ferry, came to Belgium or Paris, to France, and then they traveled through Turkey, and they went through Iran, and they came to Pakistan, where I'm from. So this land, actually, if you really look at it, is the connection between, Europe and Central Asia. And if you want to bypass the rest of the Middle East, you can go directly there. This is why the Arabian Peninsula was not part of the world history as impactful in the world history as these historic routes have been. So and it has its own relevance. The land of Israel and Palestine and Jordan and Saudi Arabia, in the biblical sense, we know biblically that this is the area where Prophet Abraham and his children, all the way up to Prophet Moses and Isaac and Jesus Christ, and then we had then Prophet Muhammad in Saudi Arabia. So they all it has its own ancient history, which is with Judeo-Christian Islamic documentation and books, we find that. But Iran was considered a main part of civilization, which had its own impact on the world. So as many of you may know, that in 1979, when the current Islamic regime, which is in power in Iran, took over through a revolution under the leadership of Imam Khomeini, they toppled the rule of Shah of Iran, who was considered a very strong ally of United States of America, and a downhill, the relationship between America and Iran took a kind of a nosedive, and it hasn't recovered yet. We always have, Iran and United States, they always find even they find a way to even further deteriorate their relationship over a period of time. So Iran has a great relevance for the United States of America, and the relevance is this spot, which is called Strait of Hormuz, which is basically this narrow path over here, which is named after this little island called Hormuz, is called Strait of Hormuz, or in Persian, is called Tanghai Hormuz, which is basically means a narrow path of Hormuz. So as much as it looks like an ocean, but this ocean is not very deep, it is quite shallow, and only very little part of this is used for international travel. But guess what? That if we really look at this, knowing that a great percentage of the oil and energy supply comes from Iraq, Kuwait, Saudi Arabia, United Arab Emirates, Oman, Qatar, it all travels through this narrow path and then goes to the rest of the world. So when it goes to Pakistan, India, Sri Lanka, Bangladesh, Singapore, and then Malaysia, and then goes all the way to Indonesia, and then through South China Sea, it goes to China, and then Japan, and then South Korea. And as you know, China alone is around 1.5 billion people. India is around 1.2 billion people. Pakistan is 220 million people. I mean, this is very heavily populated areas, and they have great energy needs. As much as in recent history, United States of America has reduced its dependence on the imported oil, especially Middle Eastern oil, but as a growing economies, consider Australia, China, India, they are very dependent on the oil that comes out of the Middle East, and so does United States. As much as our reduction in the we have reduced our dependence, but because of the oil prices have taken a nosedive, we have been able to, so it is cheaper for us to get the oil from the Middle East rather than, pump our own oil or dig our own oil wells, which is good and which is bad. But we'll talk about this right now since we're talking about Iranian situation. So Iran, as we were able to go to war with Afghanistan, we were able to go to war in Iraq. We, with all the differences and very, very difficult and very, tense relationship with Iran, we still have not taken on Iran on one as or start any sort of armed conflict, because Iranians can actually with this place, if the war happens and something happens over here, it will choke the economy of the world, and Iran is aware of that. And this is why, with all that we have been doing with Iranian regime, is we continuously putting pressure on them, and we want two things to happen. We want Iran to implode from within, and hence its regime collapses because of the economic pressures. And number two, we want Iran to come into the fold of our influence, because right now Iran is not in our fold, rather it is in the fold of our adversary at this time, which is Russia. So Russia, these states are under the influence of Russia, and in Syria, there's a Russian-supported regime, and Iraq and Syria, and then Lebanon over here, they're all under the influence of Iranian regime, and a lot of support comes from Russia. And that's problematic for us, because our allies, which are United Arab Emirates, Oman, Saudi Arabia, Jordan, Israel, and somewhat Iraq and Egypt, we do not want them to be under the influence of Iran. Now I'm going to switch my screen to another application so I can take you where to show you what's going on. So have I been able to successfully share the other screen yet? Catherine, can you tell me?
I'm still seeing your map. Oh, there we go.
Yes. Okay. So Here is the map of Iran. I know a lot of when we pronunciate Iran, we call them Iran, but as you know, Iran is not running anywhere. Iran means Iran, so we're not running. So nobody's running here. So it is Iran. So Iran is map is here, and this is the Saudi Arabian map. But this is very interesting. Interesting thing is that here we have some Arabic or Islamic symbol words written here, and these are the words written here. So it gives you a clear message that both of these countries are presenting an ideology, a religious ideology or religious identity, and they are at odds with each other. So the whole Middle East and even in South Asia, like Pakistan, India, Bangladesh, Indonesia, Malaysia, there's a competition of influence based on ideology between these two countries. What that ideology is and what the competition is, let's get to it. So okay, I think it's supposed to go out. Here we go. So Iran is 81.8 million and Saudi Arabia is 33.7 million. Iranian GDP is 454 and Saudi Arabian GDP is 786. So it is more like close to trillion, and it is like half a trillion dollars GDP. So Iran used to be a very big economy, but we have put financial restrictions through IMF and World Bank and all that. So Iranian economy is shrinking, and they are going into a tailspin, their economy, because of the sanctions that have been placed on them. Mostly of these sanctions are led by United States of America. On the other hand, we have taken side of Saudi Arabia, and Iranian ideology is based on Shia Islam, and Saudi Arabian ideology was somewhat still now, it was based on more what they call Wahhabism, or it's called Wahhabi school of thought, or more of a Sunni fundamentalist approach. And that has created tension between these two uh, originators of these ideologies, because through these ideologies, as you know, ideologies are a great conduit to exert political control and political influence in other places. We see in the United States of America, we are struggling ourselves between different ideologies or separate ideologies, and sometimes the differences between the two are not reconcilable. They're not going to get reconciled. So we are not. We are stuck with this polarized paradigm, and that's what we see is happening in with Saudi Arabia and Iran. Now, this ideology versus ideology, what it does is it creates a lot of tension in that region. And I want to look at this Middle Eastern map. Okay. Okay, again, I'm going to taking back you to the map where I was before. So what we see is in this map, if you can see, that Iran is a majority Shia population. So if we want to understand, I'm sure you do, but just giving you an example, there is just like Catholics and Protestants, there was historic tensions between the two ideologies of Christianity. Same thing. It was about Sunnis and Shias. So Iranian and a lot of Shias live in Azerbaijan, Turkmenistan, and Afghanistan, 20-30%, in Pakistan 25%, and then they have influence in this area, and Iraq, majority Shia, and then Eastern Saudi Arabia, where most of the Saudi oil wells are, also have Shia population, and then Syria and Lebanon and Jordan, they have a lot of Shia influences. There was a Shia dynasty in Egypt in 12th century, so there are a lot of Shias who reside in Egypt and Libya. So they are integrated. So think of this way, I can be a Sunni and my brother can be a Shia, or vice versa. So they are integrated, but they're still separate. So Iran has been able to use that ideological influences to exert its political influences on these countries. At times, that interference has been, very violent. And recently, you must have heard of United States accusing Iran of uh, aiding separatists or extremists, or I want to avoid the word terrorists, but the people who were hired by Iran to scare off or put American forces under pressure in Iraq, because Iran thinks that this is their area of influence and America or other countries should not be part of this. So they have what I call instrumental policies. So instrumental policies include, uh, what I call hired or mercenaries, soldiers who act at times as extremists or terrorists and all that, is just to pressurize other person or other country. So we see Iran has used that, and in this game we have used that as well. But the difference between United States and West and Iran and Iranian-backed countries are that we are highly organized. We have the world, majority of the world viewpoint with us, and we have majority of United Nations. So we have instruments or policies in place in which we appear more legitimate in doing this than they do. And Iran also had a very long historical relationship with Europe, especially France and Italy and this area. And they, so before President Trump took over, there was an Iranian deal because there was a very strategic effort by the United States to bring Iran slowly in the fold of the civilized nations. Not that they're not civilized, but in the what do you say, in the community of nations. So we can have we can balance our policy between Saudi Arabia and Iran, because we have been too dependent on Saudi Arabia in last many years, and that has provided Saudi Arabia a bit of I would say a bit more influence through us, and because we have to give them a green light to do certain things which we shouldn't have done that. And this is why we had the history of 9/11 and so on and so forth. So we wanted to open doors into Iran so we can have Iran balance Saudi, uh, counter Saudi's influences in the area. But since we backed out of that agreement with Iran, so it has made Saudis more stronger, but and this is something that we want to see certain changes in Iran. We want it on the defensive. So Iran, because of that opening, without not having the opportunity to open up to America, they are we are pushing them further in the air, in the arms of Russia and China, and Iran. More it starts depending on them, more it becomes vassal of their policies. And the reason, one of the reasons which I think maybe the Trump administration has done that, because they believe that Iranian pressure on Saudi Arabia through Bahrain, Eastern Saudi Arabia, and Iraq was reaching a point where they were afraid that Saudi Arabia may not be able to hold its own, so there has to be some sort of a pushback. So these two schools of thought in our State Department, they keep debating each other to find a way to deal and how to balance this. If we balance the Middle East, uh, uh, we balance the balance the tension of powers in the Middle East. That will be the best way to lower the temperature in the Middle East and hence have a better control. And if we, it's not that we should be playing both sides, but if we have opened up the diplomatic relationship and we have influence on both sides in Saudi Arabia and Riyadh, which is the capital of Saudi Arabia, and Tehran, which is the capital of Iran, then we are better off having a balanced approach. That is my opinion, because Iran can serve a very important role for us. It can serve a role in Afghanistan, which is a country of concern for us because we have dumped billions and billions of dollars, and we have been, at war in that country for the longest period of time. So it would not hurt us to have friendly or friendlier or less hostile Iran working with us in Afghanistan to stabilize that region and also be able to balance Saudi influence in the region, because Saudi Arabia has a lot of influence in Pakistan, in Bangladesh, and all these countries where there are Sunni majority countries, and Saudi Arabia enjoys a bit of an influence because of that. But you all must have heard of MBS, Mohammed bin Salman, the new prince, who is trying to move Saudi Arabia away from that ideology. But this is the problem, and this is where I will end my presentation and entertain questions. That So it is a catch-22. If Saudi Arabia moves away from its ideological base, it diminishes its influence in all these areas. Now, to counter that decrease in or that decline in ideological influence, Saudi Arabia may think that, okay, what I will do is I will exert my economic prowess and economic influence on these countries. And but the problem is that oil prices are down. Saudi Arabia doesn't have that kind of cash flow. It doesn't have that kind of financial backbone to be able to exert that. So they themselves are actually, they're in jeopardy. Okay, if they try to move away from their ideological base, then they lose the influence. And if they try to replace that influence with the money, they don't have the money. So they have to find some place to lock in their interests. So they are locking in their interests with the United States of America and its partners, but they're more dependent on the United States and United Kingdom than any other European or Western power. And that this is why you see that, and this is the thinking that is more comes from more of a conservative viewpoint in the State Department and as in Trump administration. They think this way we will be able to have that if we make the Saudi bloc more powerful, then it will be able to counter the influence of Iran, and hence there will be a balance of power. Uh, if we if we take too much side of Iran to bring them into our fold, we will be further weakening our ally, our traditional ally, Saudi Arabia, which has been our ally since 1945, since the World War II. So, Catherine, I'm ready to take any questions if there are.
Hey, thank you. The first question I'm seeing is, can you speak a little bit about Iran's role with the current conflict between Armenia and Azerbaijan?
Okay, so let me further go into, it's an interesting question. Because one thing is happening because of the Saudi decline of influence, another country is prompting up, which is Turkey, to fill in the vacuum of that ideological or what I call, pan-Islamic identity influence. So Turkey is trying to fill in that vacuum to do this as Saudi Arabia is moving away. So Armenia and Azerbaijan, both of these countries came onto the surface after 1990s when the Soviet Union collapsed. And since then, their traditional and historic tensions have, resulted in clashes on the border for a long time. So there's an area where they are fighting each other, which is a bit of a mountainous area between Azerbaijan and Armenia. And Azerbaijan is mostly people of Turkish origin or Turkish, ethnically Turkish, and Armenians uh, are also of the same kind of origin, but they're mostly they are Christian, majority of them, Orthodox Christians, and they are surrounded by. Sorry, my phone is ringing. I gotta. So, so they're surrounded by the. So Armenia is a country, Christian majority country that is surrounded by the Muslim majority countries. But since uh, Turkey has very good relations and has tried to reestablish it as post World War One influences, that was when the Ottoman Empire was finished and was disintegrated into small states, and then Russia took them over under USSR, and now they're trying to reestablish their connection and influences. And Azerbaijan is one of those countries which is very dependent on Turkey. However, the interesting thing is, as I said earlier, that Azerbaijan's is good size. Almost the majority of the population are Shias who are actually get their aspirations from Iran, but they do not find right now politically close to Iran because Iran has good relations with Armenia. They don't want to destabilize these borders, so they are not very happy with Azerbaijan being in conflict with Armenia because Iran is paying more attention to what is happening on this side, where they feel that they're under siege by America and American allies. So they don't want this conflict getting out of hand. So they're very much involved in trying to bring this thing together as much as quickly as possible. And Azerbaijan is a country who lost some area because they were not very militarily strong a few years back, but now they are re-exerting themselves. They have been working very hard, doing lobbying in Washington, D.C. and other places. So they're trying to get a region back from Armenia where which has a lot of natural resources. So this is what the conflict is about.
Thank you for that. The next comment I'm seeing is, I so appreciate the level of presentation and maps. The comment I'm seeing next is, a country that constantly states death to America in reality is our enemy, and aren't we at war with a country that wants us dead?
Okay, so here's something which I teach my students, and I will also share that with you. And I tell them that countries don't have interests. Countries don't have friends. Countries have interests. So as America, we don't have any permanent friends and not permanent enemies either. We have to see how our interests are met. Just as many politicians in many parts of the world and including our politicians use slogans, they use narratives to serve their purpose, and they get some people on the streets to burn some flags and call some names. It necessarily doesn't mean that they are not talking to us underground or behind the scene, because this is how many of these countries, they try to exert the control that listen, pay attention to us or else. And in that way, there is a narrative that came out of Iran and has been coming out of Iran since 1979, but it is, it is, uh, it has been toned down quite a bit. Unfortunately, our media keeps showing these 20 years, 15 years old, and 30 years old media clips, and some of them might be recent, because there is an image of United States of America in those countries. Like for example, our war in Iraq has created a devastation in that country, which was on a pretext that they have weapons of mass destruction, which we never found them. So we have a bit of a credibility problem. But I think that if in the future we will see if Iran submits to our policy dictates, there will be a narrative coming out of Washington, D.C. and our media, which will be more friendly towards Iran and vice versa. If all these countries would be our enemies and all that, we will not be engaged in Saudi Arabia for almost 3/4 of a century. We will not be engaged with Iran because all these countries are great source of raw material, energy, and we exert control in that region through these, because these countries are also instrument of our policies. So we should not fall for this permanent enemies and all that. And most of you must have heard of, if not read, this great book that was written by George Orwell called 1984. And if you read 1984, I think in the middle of in the beginning of the book, you see you see the propaganda of saying that Oceania has always been our enemy, and then after a few pages, you see Oceania has always been our friend. So these friends and foes and these roles keep changing. Let me give you an example. For example, during Cold War, Pakistan was our great ally, and India was considered in Soviet camp. But now India is our strategic partner, and we are not too happy with Pakistan these days. And then same thing with Iran. Iran was our staunch ally before the 1979 revolution, and we were okay with Saudi Arabia, but then we prompted Saudi Arabia at the cost of Iran. But the disadvantage of that was that because of the Saudis' influence in Afghanistan, we ended up having Al Qaeda and all these organizations that we have to deal with. So this area is of great interest to us, because not that it only supplies energy and oil to us, it supplies energy and oil to rest of the world, and we must control the speed of the progress of this world, including Europe, because well, if we cannot run as fast as they can, then maybe we can make them run a little slow, so we can stay ahead of them.
Thank you for that answer. The next question I'm seeing is the U.S. better off now or when Obama was president of the United States?
No. Okay. This is a very interesting question. I don't know. Actually, you as Americans can tell us. As far as on the international scene is concerned, so this is what's happening. A lot of our allies, they are not too excited about America withdrawing from international agreements or guarantees, especially like Iran deal or the climate change. But at the same time, we have made some inroads into North Korea over here, and we have challenged the status quo that we had with China and other countries. There are two schools of thought, as I said, at State Department, conservative and more liberal. Our philosophy since World War II has been that we will, uh, uh, that having and promoting and strengthening liberal democracies around the world will be helpful for us because that will open up people for our exchange of goods and trade. It is good for our trade, especially American trade. And number two, that it will help people advance their rights. So hence we can bring down the violence. And we have been on this agenda. However, another school of thought when in the State Department and in U.S. Corridors of power is, listen, let people do whatever they want to do. We just got to take care of ourselves, and let's just take care of our country and ourselves first, and then we'll deal with everybody else as the time comes. But the problem with that school of thought is America is a leader and a superpower. Our interests are complex interests. We cannot be we cannot just withdraw from the international scenes because the vacuum we leave behind gets filled by other powers, and they are counter to our influence. Let me give you an example. After 9/11, America became a very closed society. We lost a lot of revenue that was coming from outside investments, people who were visiting America, bringing money in, because we became security-centric country. We kind of became a bit scared in that way. And guess who took advantage of that? All our allies, Germany, Canada, Australia, they took tons of money in because, okay, if you cannot go to the United States, bring your money over here. So we have to be careful because all these countries, when they sell their raw materials, their capital goes somewhere. So either their capital will go to these countries or their capital will go to, into the Pacific, or we can say, bring your capital over here. This is how we are able to keep ourselves relatively better off because we are able to exert that influence. So when we withdraw from international stage, we are actually diminish our influence there. So in that way, I would suggest that it depends on your preference. I think that President Obama's approach was to bring Iran into the fold. President Trump's approach has been to bring North Korea into the fold. So we have to see which is more successful and which is not. So this is how I believe, in my opinion. My opinion is that in the time of President Obama, we were more engaged with the rest of the world, but a lot of things were not, the world was not getting a clear message. But in President Trump's leadership, they got a very clear message, but it definitely has withdrawn us from the international arena as a major player.
Thank you for that. The next question I'm seeing is, do countries in Europe and North America support U.S. efforts and interests?
Actually, yes, they do when it suits them. So as I said, all countries, they have interests. It's not that Germany or United Kingdom, they are in love with us. They are in it for their own gains. And this is what you do as a powerful country. You manage conflicting interest to find out what is the way you can benefit from this. But as a leader of the world, certain countries have to behave in a certain way to be able to have overall influence on the world, at times even at your own cost, because in the long run, you will benefit from this. Let me give you an example of United Kingdom. So before World War I, United Kingdom was untouchable. The sun did not set on the British Empire. Then after First World War and between First World War and Second World War, their wealth and their value diminished because Europe got into unnecessary wars and they borrowed a lot of money to have those wars being funded. Sounds familiar? So we have to learn from and then United Kingdom after Second World War, when they were totally diminished as a world power, what did they do? they said, okay, we cannot be a first-rate power, but we will be a sidekick to the first-rate power, America, and we will be the second-rate power. But nonetheless, we will have the influence with the most influential party in the world, the United States of America. So they are our allies, but they benefit at times at our cost. So this is how the European countries or all countries do. However, historically, through NATO and all that, there is an understanding that the Western European countries, especially leading by United States and United Kingdom, that we will keep the balance in the world in such a way that the Eastern powers, including China and Russia, do not end up becoming so influential that they counter our way of living or our concept of liberal democracies, because we do not want that kind of system being imposed on us. So now there are three blocks in the world. There's a Western bloc, which is led by United States of America, and these days United States of America is taking a bit of a withdrawn role. And then there's a bloc that is being led by China, and then there's a bloc which is being represented by Russia, by Russian influence. And these three blocs are actually trying to balance themselves out against each other. This is where American presence on this world stage as a major player is very, very important. Otherwise, if these two blocs becomes each other's ally, they will be able to easily uh, diminish American influence in the world.
Thank you for that. The next question I'm seeing is, as the world becomes less dependent on oil, how will the Middle East countries adjust?
Actually, many countries in the Middle East, especially Saudi Arabia, is heavily investing in solar energy, and they're also investing in green energy. United Arab Emirates is doing this, but they're long way off from totally replacing their oil-based economy with the alternative means of energy and economy. United Arab Emirates has been a bit more successful. They are a very small country, but they have been able to develop their city Dubai or city-state Dubai to be able to bring a lot of money and turning Dubai into the Middle Eastern Hong Kong of the future or currently. But it has been in decline also, and the reason for that is one country's prosperity depends on the misery of the countries in other places. So Dubai became a major hotspot because the instability that was happening because of the terrorism in Afghanistan and Pakistan and some parts of India and Iran. So a lot of capital from these countries flew to Dubai. And hence Dubai got this artificial boost of economy. And actually, they are even accused of interfering in these countries to destabilize them so the capital can flow there. But now, all these people have wised up. So Pakistan has wised up, India has wised up. So that flow of capital that used to happen in Dubai has slowed down. So they have started looking into investments from Europe to bring European. So you must have seen that recently. You see a lot of ads on television about Dubai, traveling to Dubai. I think they even made a couple of movies like I think Mission Impossible 4 and Sex and the City. They have these. They brought Dubai into the narratives or in the highlights of the Western audiences. So it has trying to attract that, but they have not been very successful because if these tensions in areas like Iran, Pakistan, and all that continues to rise up, a war in Yemen, the war in Iraq. So no matter how hard they try, their people are not going to bring their money in because the instability in the region would not allow them. So it is in their favor to stabilize the relationship, all these relationships, because if they don't, they continuously decline in their economy. So as far as their dependence on the energy and oil is concerned, Saudi Arabia and all, Kuwait, Iraq, they will continue there, because even if America diminishes in its America diminishes or actually reduces its dependency on the imported oil and imported energy, there are other parts of the world like India and China and all these regions in Southeast Asia, Australia, New Zealand, and all that. They have a very great appetite and a growing appetite of energy and oil. So for next many decades, they will not be able to reduce their dependence on the oil. So for next 30, 40 years, Middle Eastern relevance will remain. Maybe it will reduce a bit, but it will remain as it has been in the past.
That's very interesting. Thank you. Next question I'm seeing is it true that Iran funds terrorist organizations such as Hamas throughout the world?
Actually, Hamas was an organization that was mostly supported by our dear friend over here, Saudi Arabia, and Iran was supporting another organization you must have heard in Lebanon called Hezbollah. So Hamas was kind of a Sunni supported organization. Iran was supporting Hezbollah. So these organizations were supported by different sets of ideologies. So Iran does have some backing of Hamas, but mostly it was supporting Hezbollah, and Hamas was being supported by people in Saudi Arabia and Egypt and other areas, Middle Eastern countries.
Thank you. The last question I'm seeing here is similar to what we had, but do you believe all countries act just out of their own interests, or do they also act to spread ideology such as the USA and democracy, or is the spread of ideology, i.e. democracy, actually an interest of a country?
This is something which since I'm talking to a very mature audience, so I'm going to share that with you. Just like, we spoke about Iran has its own ideology that they through that they got influence, and Saudis, they have their own ideologies, and so are the Russians and the Chinese. So do we. So our ideology, through our ideology, we also exert our influence, and this is why we stick to our ideology. So, many times we were called hypocrites because we spoke about liberal democracies, but around the world we were actually supporting dictators. But then we will keep an eye on the dictators by supporting the democratic movements within those countries, and we'll say, well, if you don't listen to us, we are going to start funding these democratic movements to undo you. So you better listen to us. And they'll say, okay, we'll listen to you, and then we will reduce our support for those democratic forces. So we also use this ideology of democracy to gauge and calibrate our engagement with the world and to control the world in a way. For example, many countries that if you look at the people who get Nobel Prizes for peace and Nobel Prizes for human rights, well, in those places where they're getting human rights violations and all that, we are also involved one way or another. So that way and these countries, they know this, that to do the business and get support from the Western countries, you have to be at least appear civilized. Otherwise, we will be named and we will be dubbed in certain light, and that will not be very, very beneficial for us. So that is how we use our democratic ideology around the world.
Thank you for that. Last question, if that's okay, and then I think we'll be good. What is the interest that Iran has relating to conflicts between Israel and Palestine?
The conflict between Israel and Palestine, we all know it's an old conflict. And what Iran does is Iran through Iraq, through Syria, to Lebanon, and to Israel, they want to support a two-state solution between Israel and Palestine. Iran is not very clear on that. Iran is bent on denying the right of existence for Israel. And that is what they want to exert this uh, influence on this area, because through that they get American attention and say, okay, we'll take the pressure off of from your strongest ally, Israel, and if you do, and if you take the pressure off of us, otherwise keep the pressure on. So this is how the Iranian interest is in that, and not to mention that Palestine and Israel is a very, very sensitive subject among the Middle Eastern countries all over, and especially Muslim majority countries. So that way, Iran keeps itself relevant to the rest of the world.
Thank you for that one as well. Well,
Thank
that's
you.
all the questions I'm seeing. I'll just give a couple more seconds here if anyone has any. Oh, outstanding. Thank you. Phenomenal questions. Complicated but simple.
Oh, thank you so much. I'm so. It is one of my favorite things to do. So I'm Catherine and all the participants. Anytime, please do visit our website wnmuslims.org, where we have a lot of events we list. And actually, I'm about to start a lecture series over there, and we'll keep Catherine updated on that. So, and that will be, so we want to kind of go through the history of different regions and bring people, update them. And the one thing which I really always enjoyed is about the maturity of the people, my audiences. Their questions are so well tailored and well situated. Thank you so much.
Thank you. And if anyone has any suggestions for what they want to see Faizan speak about for our spring semester, please email me. I'm happy to see what we can put together. But everyone have a great day. Again, Faizan, thank you. And everyone who joined, thank you for your time. We'll see you later.
Thank you.